Holla ballers, are we ready to get mashed up? Because I did. Eventually, I got mashed up. My God, I returned to a Souls-like, a good one. There are so many out there now, right? You've seen them, Lords of the Fallen. The list goes on and on and on of people who have obviously, like, at this point, grown up with the Souls franchise existing and love it. And, like, I wish it had this element. I wish it was more like this. And have now created their own. But almost inevitably, I don't think I'm the only one who feels this way. They're just not quite there. They're so close. They're so close. Like, they have the basics, you know, your stamina, your animation locks, your all the little elements that make that Souls-like combat experience, but they're just something's usually missing, sometimes worse than others. It's like it's almost there, but the GOAT is still FromSoft's creations. You know what I mean? Like, they are the GOAT for a reason. They are meticulous, particularly in hitbox design. I don't know how they do it. Probably by, like, spending hundreds of hours per enemy to make sure, like, its arm is exactly where the visual is at all times. It's not perfect, and I have my issues with the Souls games. I am in that camp. I've done them all, but I like Dark Souls 3, I don't particularly like. They had gotten to the point in Dark Souls 3 where people were just too good at their games, is how I felt about it. So they just started blatantly cheating with certain enemies, where they'd have, like, I think the worst one, if I remember right, someone actually studied it, and there was a YouTube video about it. I don't know if Bex can find it, but it's one of the enemies in Dark Souls 3, I think in the swamp, has a 2-frame animation begin till impact. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, you can't respond to what's going on, which feels unfair. Either way, Lies of P, when it came out, I remember looking at it with envious eyes, because my favorite game of all time, and I mean all time, is Bloodborne. I love that thing, because it's the Souls-like experience in a setting I really enjoy. Like, if there's any big negative I have about the Souls-like experience, it's that medieval fantasy style. Not my favorite. Give me Lovecraftian any day of the week, and Bloodborne had all that in spades, and just took it to the next level. So loved everything about it. And Lies of P looked like that, and I can't remember, we were doing something else at the time, so I was like, right, that is on the list, we're going to play it. And now here that time has come, because the DLC's just come out, so we're going to have a full experience. Really excited for this, and I'm so glad I did this, because coming back to my intro little preface there, it is Bloodborne-like. It's very, very close. It's very, very close. It has that slicker, sort of less meaty animation and movement. It's nice and quick. It's got that odd aesthetic that isn't the fantasy stuff, because we are puppets. It's obviously based on it's based on Pinocchio. It's a twist on the Pinocchio story. So we've got Geppetto in there. We're obviously Pinocchio. And it's all about telling lies. And we have Jiminy Cricket, who's with us, is our guide. We've got all those elements. But essentially, the story of Lies of P, I will admit here, they, in a charming way, are obviously inspired by the Soul series, and they just got so, not just wearing their inspiration on their sleeve, but they got funny with it, and I kind of dig it. Although it did lead me back into my Souls-like habits, which is, by about 4 hours in, I stopped reading all the notes and articles and things like that, because there isn't much of a story here, at least that I could find. Perhaps there's something if you're like a lore master and you're like, well, if you pick up this clue from over here and this clue over here, then it ties into some really emotional story. But the story is exceedingly simple, and I'm good with that. Like it's like a very, very basic story. From what I can tell, I could be way wrong on this. It's a very basic story. They're like, well, we got to throw all this crap in there because that's the Souls-like experience, right? So the story is essentially they discovered this Smurf juice, the blue Smurf juice, Fable. They call it Fable, which is fantasy. Good name. And this allowed the puppets to be autonomous and come to life, essentially. But they were obeying the robotic laws, which you'll know. You've heard them probably a million times. You know, thou shalt not harm humans. Thou shalt follow instruction, blah, blah, blah. But then there was an incident called the Puppet Frenzy. And the Puppet Frenzy called them all to go wild and kill everybody. So, and the remaining humans are trapped inside, and they're also suffering from something called the petrification disease, which is causing them to turn to stone, essentially, from what I can tell. They're growing scales like lizard people and going crazy, and we do fight some of them later on. And so you've got mad puppets roaming the streets, which allows for so much creativity, so much fun with what they're making. And then we've also got the humanoid creatures, which are turning into crazy sort of eldritch monsters, right? The final boss I killed of this day, big boss, was a minister? Some sort of religious figure. I fought him in a cathedral. He was a big eldritch monster by that point. He'd turned into a monstrously... remind me of Aldrich from Dark Souls 3. Very much that style. Very much that inspiration of the big swooping snake thing going on. So that's what I did. And that's what's going on. So, and you are a special puppet because you can lie. Because one of the main rules of puppets is they cannot tell a lie, but you are able to lie. And you have to lie. I was hoping to do a playthrough where you didn't lie, but that's unavoidable, at least if you want to do like an honorable playthrough, I guess. You have to lie at first to get into the hotel, which is the central hub of the game. That's where your blacksmith will be and all your modifications will be done. Similar to the church in Bloodborne. Or Hunter's Dream, going back there. And in there, there's some characters that I've no doubt will turn out to be baddies. And along the way, you're going to bump into hunters, but they're called stalkers in this game, and they all wear animal heads. And if they find out if you're a puppet, they're going to kill you. And all this kind of... So very, very... It's Bloodborne, but wrapped in this puppet style. So I'm enjoying the hell out of it. It is definitely not FromSoft quality, though. I mean, it's unavoidable. You notice it very, very quickly if you're experienced with these games. It's like, it's close. It's really close. It's not quite there, though. It's not quite there, though. There's definitely some little bit of jank. There's obviously less time and money probably gone into it because it's a smaller studio. And they're not as veterans as what... How many Souls games are there now? 3 mainline series, Demon Souls, Elden Ring, Sekiro, DLCs on top of that. So probably like 10 versions of these games and Bloodborne on top of it. So like there's definitely a little bit of that. So some hitboxes are just not there. A couple of times. I doubt Bex can find the clip because the animations are so quick. But definitely sometimes you'll just hit and you're like, that's nowhere near me, dude. That's nowhere near me. But I had great fun. I also got to relive that experience as a streamer, which is like, if you one-shot a boss, the game is too easy and people start questioning the difficulty. We're playing on the hardest difficulty, which is the normal difficulty, I think, Legendary Stalker. There's 2 modes before that if you just want to enjoy the story, which I think is great. If you just want to go and hack and slash your way through the game and enjoy it, go and do that. Like, FromSoft doesn't allow you to do that. You have to build a character to do that. Here, they just have easier difficulty modes, so we're on the hardest one, which equates to normal difficulty in these kind of games. And started working my way through. Nice, simple combat, very quickly. Leveled all into motivity, which is where I noticed they were having fun. Because so many times, games just try and deviate away from the standards, like strength, dexterity, right? The things we have known since, like, 1970s... of stats that are like, well, it's not strength, it's motivity because you're a puppy. Like, okay, dude. Okay, it's not magic, it's advance. And you're like, all right. Sure, dude. Sure, bro. Whatever you say. Whatever you say. But one thing I have done this time, usually I lock into a weapon very early. It was one of the things I didn't like about my Bloodborne first playthrough was that the saw axe or whatever it was called was just so good that I just used that for the whole game, and it was no problem. But they came up with so many creative, wonderful weapons that this time around I've tried to do a lot of different types of weapons and try them out. I'm strength build, so I'm not using dex weapons because they would just do no damage. But I'm trying all different kinds out. Boss weapons, holy swords, all this kind of stuff. Has led to the awkward point, which I know isn't a huge deal, is that investing into a weapon with weapon upgrades and then you change weapon just always feels like a waste. They do give you plenty of them, and there's a vendor that can sell the earlier versions of them. But you know what it's like when you invest into a weapon, you get like +4, +5, and then it's like, oh, there's a new weapon here, and I kind of like that. So you swap, and it's like, well, now this is like base, so I've got to work that back up. I really loved how on the nose they were. Is if you use a boss weapon, they upgrade with different types of stones, and they just were like, okay, what should we call this thing? It's the Crescent Moonstone of Smithing of the Darkness Alchemy. Or They're like, it's just so absurd. And I really appreciate that. Like, they're just like, yeah, it's just an absurd name. Instead of just calling it Upgrade Stone, we'll just go with this massive tooltip just to highlight how preposterous some of these names are in these games. Because all these games do this. They come up with their twist on it and they just add crap to it. So they were like, send it, just like massive name, Moonstone. Oh, all right, dude. All good. But I am trying out different weapons and have a lot of fun with it. Let's talk about the systems in here that differentiates it. So the things that they obviously look at the Souls like and they're like, okay, what if we did this? So we've got a talent tree. I was surprised. I had no idea this game had a talent tree. It does have a talent tree where you can modify. I can't remember what they were called in Bloodborne. I know it's my favorite game of all time, but I'm crap with names. You guys know that. Where you etched in the Carol runes. I think they're just called runes. You etched in Carol runes, which gave you like bonuses to your playstyle. I really like that. They've got that here as well. So in the talent tree, you will get an overall bonus. It'll be like, you get an extra health vial, but you need to put in 2 Carol runes, essentially. That'll be like, well, you have a slightly bigger stagger window. You have a slightly better recoup during the guard. There are definitely some systems I don't quite understand. There's like guard regain. And these lead to just these massive World of Warcraft style tooltips where it's like, reduces or increases guard regain while guarding while less stamina is. And I'm like, I don't know what you're doing. Just like, whatever. I like it when it goes bonk. I'm an orc at heart, dudes. I'm an orc at heart. Like, I'm sure there's a really nice build in there, but I'm not reading all that. That's not happening. It's way too many words. So I like that system though. That's quite cool. Which adds another currency called quartz, which you can buy some from vendors. You can get it from mini bosses. Which allow you to just upgrade your character in interesting ways. And you also, I like that each of the nodes, so let's say you want to get 1 health vial, you need to put an offensive rune at the top. Each of them has 2 slots, and then the bottom one is some sort of defensive rune. So it does balance itself to say we don't want you to just be purely offensive. We put some defensive stuff in there and make it work. And I actually built some strategy around that, which was nice. So I enjoyed that as well. Then we've got this arm. The arms I'm not super sold on. It's like a twist on the Sekiro arm, where you have a robotic arm that can be modified and changed into a variety of different things, and that can also be upgraded itself. It's got like 4 tiers of functionality. I haven't found a really cool way of using it. I liked the death grip one, and I might switch back to that, where you could drag enemies towards you. That was kind of cool to separate things out or to pull things that were across ledges and bridges and things along those lines. So I'm probably going to swap back to that. Currently, I'm using the flamethrower arm. It's fine. It's fine. But I often just prefer the normal melee combat rather than sliding this in. I think Sekiro did it better by just having function practical arm uses, such as the fireworks, which could disrupt and stagger an enemy during a mid-attack. Things like that I found much more useful and flowed better into the combat. Like the flamethrower, for example, you have to stand and channel it. I'd rather just be attacking, right? Like, I get it with burning mobs and stuff, and it can set up some fun things, but I'd rather just be DPSing with my big sword, honestly. So I'll probably swap that around and see what other options we get later on. So it's got that functionality in there. And, of course, the return of the parry system. This is kind of what I wanted to focus on before we talk about the bosses. Is that I read an article. I got sent an article by a very good member of the community who was like, didn't agree with it, and I kind of did. I think it was by IGN. I'll link it for Bex after this video, so she can link it down below, and see what you think. You might disagree with me, right? The last thing I want is this to be an echo chamber. Where it said, it was about Expedition 33. It's like, Expedition 33's parry system is brilliant, but it can't become the norm. Parrying has become, the last few games I've played have all had a parry system in it. It is getting a little tiresome. Not gonna lie, it's a little tiresome because the parry system hasn't actually innovated in a very long time. It's always been the case since forever. This isn't new. Of watch the animation and land the counterattacks as you land. And there's a skill element to it that's very satisfying and very, very nice. I agree. It is very, very satisfying. However, it is popping up in a lot of action games now. A lot. In very different forms. Like, you could argue Witch Time in Bayonetta is also just a parry system, right? It's the perfect dodge or whatever you want to call it. And it is a little tiresome. Now, obviously, I could just avoid games that have them, but I want to play that game. And one thing I do like about FromSoft is, while it does have parry capabilities, you absolutely do not actively want to play that way. It's not overly encouraged. Let's put it that way. you can play just fine with the normal dodge roll, right? With iframes and whatever. And that's fine. You get that smooth, sort of amiable manual combat. One thing I find with the parry system that does start to get tiresome on me is you're especially in games that highly encourage it. So Expedition 33 would be the same way. And I had it fine there. I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying in the future, this is more like, I don't want this to become the norm in every combat game. And this is games the same. If you parry the bosses, which you're very much encouraged to do, and in fact, the glow red, I predicted, which usually means you can't parry it, actually forces you to parry. You can't dodge it. You can parry it, though. So, and also that massively increases the stagger window and DPS that you're going to do on the boss. It's hugely encouraged and incentivized to do parries. Is you end up more just stood in front of the boss, waiting for attacks. That's the bit I don't really like. It's a minor grievance. I know. It's a minor grievance, but you're more incentivized instead to think more about positioning and attacking from sides and different angles. Like, which I do in the Souls games is I was like, I want to attack more from his like left side here because his attacks tend to move to the right and things like that. And you just like, that's part of the strategy of fighting the boss is like, where is a good attack vector? When it comes to like parrying being overly incentivized, your best job is to really just stand right in its face and just learn the patterns. And after like 100 bosses of doing that across multiple games, yeah, I'm like, okay, I can do a little flavor difference. But the parry system is here and it's highly encouraged. And once again, it is very satisfying and good to pull off. Once you learn that boss fight, you do feel you do it. I one-shot every boss except the cathedral guy, the minister, whatever, right? That was the guy that, like, this took about maybe 15 tries, maybe more. This was tough because it was our first two-phase fight. And the reason I died probably over a third of the times while progging this fight and learning the patterns was actually one attack. And I could not for the life of me figure out what it did. Well, I know what it does. I couldn't figure out how you were supposed to avoid this damn thing. So what happened is in phase 2, the actual minister guy comes out, and you've got this Aldrich style fight, which, first of all, camera boss, this is common of all these kind of games. Lock-on is very much encouraged in this game. Usually I don't play with lock-on, but here it is very, very useful. But he's swaying and swinging around so much that you end up like just losing him and being able to time the parries. You see the way the parry system came in here? I wouldn't play with lock-on so much if I didn't have to parry. It's kind of that mix. You want to be locked on because it makes the parrying significantly easier. At least for my first playthrough. And the camera was all over the place. And due to some of the hitboxes, you could get trapped constantly against walls. Really frustrating, actually. Very, very frustrating part of this fight. It was like, because it was the first big boss, like big, overwhelming boss in a tighter space that we'd fought. And you could get stuck a lot. And it was very frustrating because you just couldn't tell what the boss was doing. No way you could time what he was doing. And he could just smash you. But then he had this attack, which he would only do in P2 and only do it when it was below 50% health, I think. And this attack was charging a giant laser. Now, this ain't the first time. God, if you think of Freya's the Duke's Dear Freya or any boss like that, the giant lasers have existed in these games for a really long time, and typically they have reasonable courses of action. One is to run the hell away. When it started charging, I actually thought it was going to be one of your typical giant AoE explosions, so I legged it to the back of the room like miles and miles away, and then it shot me right in the face like a sniper. I was like, oh, it's a laser. Okay. Came back. Then it was a case of, well, I guess we need to move to the side or dodge roll it or whatever when it comes out. Because it's got like a charge up, like an Expedition 33 type thing. So I was like, all right, I'll do that. But then I realized, oh, it actually, when it not only does the boss track you throughout most of this animation. So instead of locking in and like trying to shoot this laser at you, the boss will spin like it's on like a DJ table. It will spin while it's charging in a very unnatural way as it tracks you. And then it will fire. Which meant you couldn't really get out of the way. I'm sure there is a perfect dodge roll or maybe even a parry that works with this, but it just wouldn't land. And then I found out it also has an enormous AoE impact where it is. So I was like, okay. And it's a one-shot, by the way. This is just a straight one-shot ability. I was like, okay. At least with my setup, right? I'm sure if you have infinite health, you can survive it. So I was like, okay. So it's coming out of one half of it. So let's go to the other side. So when it started charging, I then run to the other side, right? Because the laser's going one way to the other side. So the laser goes off. It doesn't hit me. But then it turns out the other side has a laser as well. And that does that huge AoE impact. So I was like, oh my God, okay, so that's not going to work. So maybe we need to get to the side. Okay. So then it starts charging. So I move to the side and start moving out. But then it turns out the AoE explosion is so large that it actually encompasses not only where it hits, but a huge radius under the boss as well, and it actually overlaps. So the frontal radius is huge, and then the back radius is huge as well. So it was like, okay, can't really do that either. I will tell you now, I never solved this, and it was really frustrating. Because it kept going, whenever it went off, I was like, what else is there to try? Because you might say run to the side and run really far away, but he tracks you so much you couldn't really do that. I'm sure there's a simple solution to this, but I get very frustrated when I'm not solving something like this. And actually killing it, which I did, I killed it when it just didn't do it. And so I had the toughest boss I fought so far, I just had such a deflated, like, All right. Okay, I guess it's dead. A deflated moment as it fell to the floor. So I will be going back to fight this again. And someone told me that, well, there's a way of like fighting all the bosses again later. I was like, okay, we're going to revisit this boss because I did not solve the bit that I was struggling with. Like, I'd mastered most of its attacks. I was consistently getting there over and over again and then just dying to this attack. I'm like, oh, God damn it, man. Like, what is it? I couldn't even, like, hard guard it. I was like, what if I just put my guard up so I would take massively reduced damage? It still one-shot me through the guard. I was like, oh, God damn it. Like, I'd have been fine with that. It's like, okay, we just need to kind of take this on the chin and see how it goes. But I couldn't do it. Either way, the actual game itself, good atmosphere. Very reminiscent of lots of games. Good mini-bosses. And very wary. Good placement and shortcuts as well. Much more linear than a Souls game. I haven't found too many areas where like you can go off on a massive beaten track to maybe find an old cathedral, you know, like where Pontiff would be or something like that. And then you end up in a different village and you have to come back and go a totally different direction, which leads to other bosses. Haven't found that. Actually been very straightforward and linear. I'm fine with that because I'm old and I get lost. But for the most part, nice simple items. No mimics yet or anything like that. Waiting for that one. But very happy so far. Very happy. It's scratching that itch that I want. And I'm looking forward to... Now we've got some bigger scary bosses where they're going to go. So check in tomorrow. Bye, guys.